Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. If anyone wants to, so thank you everyone who has their cameras on. If anyone more people want to turn them on, I end up actually demoing to you. So if you look bored, I'll like rush through sections. If you look really interested, I'll like add things or be kind of interactive. I've given these kind of demos a lot, but the real benefit for me is interacting with all of you and actually understanding like what you are most interested in and hearing your questions and stuff. So I'll try to kind of keep an eye on the chat. Yeah, and we can kind of hop in. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Bring that back up. Okay. Why did that exit presenter mode? Come on. Okay. So this is the general agenda of kind of what I want to talk about. So I have lots of just little itty bitty tips and tricks to go over with new Visual Studio 2022. A lot of it, I have a lot of testing stuff. I have some hot reload and performance tips with .NET 6. We have some exciting things on remote testing and connecting to different environments like a Linux container and running tests there, or over SSH or WSL, so we can get into that. And then I have a ton of productivity code fixes and refactorings. David is actually on our productivity team, so David Wenger, who's in chat. So he can probably demo this much better than I can, so I feel a little bit judged. No. But we'll go into the cool navigation stuff and Razer Editor improvements and refactorings and all of the things that kind of added there. So let's dive into it. Where's my mouse? Forward slides. There we go. Okay, so Visual Studio, too far. Oh, it's so laggy. Okay, Visual Studio 2022 is 64-bit. That's a huge, huge thing for us. People were asking for this for years. So this means the Devin.exe process is no longer limited to 4 GB of memory. So for users with large, complex solutions, it's an absolute game changer. So you just have more memory available for everyday operations like debugging and searching and loading your project and running and open editing, all of that good stuff. It doesn't change the bitness of the applications that you develop with Visual Studio, so you can still make 32-bit apps with 64-bit Visual Studio and just get those performance improvements. A big thing with this is in Solution Explorer search. I think we did actually blog about this on the Visual Studio blog. I'll have to go check if I can actually find the link. But for solutions, open source solutions like Orchard Core, just searching in the Solution Explorer became 50% faster, which we were very excited about. Cool. And I can't mention performance things without referring to the amazing Stephen Tove's .NET 6 performance blog post. If you want to get super incremental on how the heck every single update to the framework is so much faster, you can go through the 400 PRs that Stephen summarized of where we're actually getting performance improvements. So these are super core areas like formatting and sums and get length and compare on all of these different C# types. A ton of these improvements were contributed in the open source from the community, I think over half of them. So yeah, we're just, that's one of the huge benefits of, you know, being an open source platform. People will come out of nowhere and help you out with making your formatter more efficient, which is absolutely amazing. So we love that. Some of the cooler stuff in Visual Studio 2022 that it's more visual performance. You just get it. You don't have to do anything, you know. It just feels a bit faster. But the more visual things, in Visual Studio 2022, we have new themes. So we actually took a bunch of really popular Visual Studio Code themes, and we made a theme converter that can put Visual Studio Code themes right into Visual Studio. So Grace Taylor has a blog post about that on Visual Studio Code, and it got a ton of attention with some of the most popular themes in the community, like Abyss, Dark Plus, Kimby Dark, Light Plus, Monokai, Red, Solarized Red, Tomorrow Night Blue, and our community themes were like Winter is Coming, so kind of Game of Thrones theme, Cyberpunk, Dracula, Deep Dark, that kind of thing. And one thing that I really like here is you can set your Visual Studio theme now to match your Windows system setting as well. So I can use my system settings. So my entire Windows 10 setting is dark mode, so all of my Windows 10 like search and my settings kind of thing all show up in like dark windows. My whole office, my Outlook is in dark windows, so now Visual Studio can also adapt to that kind of thing. And what else is cool? Yeah, just general. So one thing to call out in our dark themes is we do have more contrast. So you might see a lot of things, a lot of our documentation and presentations like this. Normally I would always use blue theme because that is met the accessibility requirements. Now dark theme does too. So you might actually finally be like, oh, this is why we're using dark theme. So some of our documentation will be updated like that too. So something you might notice immediately is my tabs are different colors. So we do have tabs colored by project now. So it can immediately help you organize your tabs better, and you can set the color and customize it for a specific project group. So you can set it to absolutely anything. Let's go with like blue, and I can reset all of my tabs for a certain project. Yeah, and just while we're still talking about kind of visual stuff and themes, I want to go ahead and talk about, we have new properties pages UI, new-ish, sorry, I guess it's been a while, a long time now, but now it's themed, it's one continuous scroll. So you don't need to like hunt through multiple different pages, you can just search one whole thing. So if I want to look up my fancy schmancy code analysis, if I knew how to spell it, I could find my code analysis settings kind of all in the same pane, which is really nice. That's project properties UI update as well. Okay. So, oh, I got some chats. Can you set the tab color per namespace? No, but I do really want to look at if that request exists on developer community yet. Did you all know that you can send feedback on Visual Studio with this little icon up at the top right? And you can suggest a feature and request things exactly like that. So when I get requests like this, my first instinct is, oh, I got to go to developer community right here, and I got to search for it, and I got to upvote it if to see if people are kind of upvoting them out in the wild. So you can find stuff like that there. I know tabs by color by project was super popular. I'll have to look up if namespace is on the backlog. Cool. Let me introduce you to this app a little bit. This is a really simple solar system solution that is just loads like a NASA RSS feed and calculates what planets are visible in tonight's sky, and does some nice stuff with uses a bit of Blazor, .NET 6, all that good stuff. So there's the RSS feed, and one thing that I want to show off is hot reload. So hot reload is the ability to basically, sorry, just catching up with where I've gotten, modify your app's managed source code while the application is running without needing to manually pause or hit a breakpoint. So you can simply make a supported change, and while it's running, it'll apply code changes and apply your edits. So we have a button to kind of hot reload your app to apply code changes, but you can also reload on save. So let me show you a little bit what that looks like. So my app is currently running. Pull that up right now. Oh, come on. There we go. So let me just change the header here really quickly. And I think there was a question in chat that I was trying to absorb while talking, which is tough. In debug mode, the lower status bar changes to a brownish color. Can this be easily changed? Yeah, I know that orange of what you're talking about. It's actually in my I can get rid of my Teams notification. There we go. Yeah, I don't think you can set this color. Actually, let me just dig into it. Maybe David knows, but because there's an intense amount of stuff you can set in your environment. General. Fonts and colors. There we go. What I wanted. So for text editor, usually this is like different settings of text and not background colors. So I doubt that you can. Oh, wait a second. Well, that wouldn't be right. No, that's not it. I'd hunt around in here for, for a minute to see if I could change the color of this bar down here. Yeah, I'll have to look that up later. Yeah, so there's an extension to change that bar color, but it's overkill. Yeah, not sure. Uh, let's see, I'll keep trucking forward. What was I going to show? Oh, hot reload. So let's pull up my pane again. So oh, so I need to save the file. So actually, let me dock this to the side so that it's a little bit more obvious. So I'll go ahead and save this file. All I did was duplicate this header here. So Control S, and without like reloading my page, without F5ing, without even like, rebuilding, my header appears in my tab. So it helps you can massively reduce how many times you have to build your app in that iterative loop. Hot reload is very much based on sort of the edit and continue technology, but you could only use that in the context of the debugger with a breakpoint before. And now we've taken out that requirement that you're like halted at a breakpoint in order to kind of do the hot reload. So let's look at something a little bit cooler. Let's look at the kind of find visible planets code. I'll navigate in my Razer file to the C# code block that we're actually in. And I kind of move this over, make this a little bigger. Let's try that. So here I have a for each loop that's really just checking if the planets are within the today's kind of date. So it runs through this little planet file and compares if all the dates in it are within today's range to figure out if that planet is visible in tonight's sky. So if I went ahead and broke this code, this is going to affect this line, these planets visible today. And this is actually me like editing C#. So all I have to do is save it. That line disappears because I broke the code. So, you know, no kind of rebuild happened in the background. It's very like subtle and incremental, and so it can save me a lot of time to kind of actually see and develop changes. Yeah, so again, in order to use it, you need hot reload on file save, that's the trigger, or you can just press this button directly and kind of hot reload your changes. So let's take a look at that in a test scenario, because that's inside of debugging or F5ing even. So even the start without debugging, Control F5, hot reload is totally applicable. It's also applicable when you're testing. If you go ahead and turn on the experimental hot reload test runs for C# and Visual Basic in .NET 6 and higher. So .NET 6 and higher, that is one limitation for testing specifically. For when you're debugging or the F5 loop, so F5 without debugging, it will work even back to previous versions of if you're targeting .NET Framework, or even, and of course, earlier versions of .NET Core, so .NET 5 or .NET 3.1. It can work back there, and it's compatible with I think all of the modern .NET project types, so WPF, WinForms, .NET MAUI, ASP.NET Core, console applications, WinUI 3, and a lot of others. So let's look a little bit about how it works in the Test Explorer. So the huge thing that we always get in feedback on tests is I've just built, how do I avoid doing a rebuild when I'm running tests? And this can help out massively with that ask. So if you do need to have at least one build on disk, so you need to go ahead and have at least one build with hot reload on with that checkbox on. So if I go ahead and switch to tests and clear that pane, I'll pin my Test Explorer up here for a minute. Oh, I built the wrong test project. Let's do that one. So I have tests that are doing kind of similar things, testing the similarly visible planets, and this test is just console.writeLining what visible planets are going to print out with this logic. So as soon as I test it once, you can see that it did do a build when I ran that test project. So I'll go ahead and clear that pane. So I have like a build on my disk, right? And when I built that, I got my standard output. I know what visible planets were there. So I'm going to go ahead and change this test code. And then I'll rerun this test. So now no planets should appear. Am I satisfied with hot reload and Test Explorer? Absolutely. That's my own survey trolling me there. Anyway, okay, so the test ran. I got the new results, so it picked up the changes of breaking that if statement there. And look at our build pane. It's still blank. It's still cleared. So no new rebuild happened, even though I actively was changing test code. It could rerun a test without a build. Super cool. This is crazy. This will save an immense amount of time. Okay, cool, cool, cool. So remember that is a option in Tools option. So go ahead and actually you can get there by just from your Test Explorer, going Test Explorer, the gear icon with options and that little checkbox there. You catch up on chats. The sort order of Tools options, fonts, and colors is weird. I agree, it's probably terrible. We should probably make it more alphabetical or logical. And it's independent of unit test framework. Yes, hot reload is independent of unit test framework. So it'll work for XUnit and unit MS test. Because it all works through the VS Test console. Cool. Or the VS Test runner, rather. Not the, yeah, okay. Okay, so some more little tips and tricks with testing that I want to show off. One really cool thing that I'll never shut up about. Now, when you right-click inside of a test, you can jump directly to that test in the Test Explorer and it'll highlight it. Yes, so this is a lot like sync with active document that you might have used in the Solution Explorer. So I can jump to the document that I have open in my editor in the Solution Explorer. So I can jump down there, which is really nice. Just highlight it, get everyone in the same context. So even if the Test Explorer is everything's collapsed, I exit out of it entirely, it'll always pop up and open where I want. It does have the keyboard shortcut. It's Control ES. Pretty nice. Just the little things sometimes. I'm actually expecting way fewer people to use the search in the Test Explorer to actually find tests that they need, because it's just, you don't have to like actually hold the test name in your head and type it out and like actually search for it. It's just jump to the thing you need, which is so nice. Cool. Oh, and I think I forgot to do something when I shared. I need to share with audio. Let me go ahead and include computer sound. Some of you might know what's coming. So in the Test Explorer, you can now play a sound when tests finish running, which is lovely. So let's see what sound I have set. I'll go ahead and run. So I ran a single test and all of the tests in that run passed. So let's run it if at least one test is failing. So some of you may be wondering, was that a customized sound? It was indeed. I wouldn't just put that in default. That would be, would I do that? No, my bosses wouldn't let me do that. Let's do that. So you can configure sounds again in the test tools options, and it opens the Windows 10 sound dialog. So you can choose from any WAV file that you have on your machine. Visual Studio actually has a ton of extension points. So you can also play sounds when you like hit breakpoints or when builds, cancels, fails, succeeded. So these are just really nice when you're like multitasking, you kicked off any kind of long running operation and you just yabba dabba do. That would be a great sound. Thank you, chat. So you can, choose any sound that kind of brings you back to the context of what you were doing and gets you back in the mode. So let's see. That was my funny sound. I think there's a more normal sound that I usually try to, yeah, something like a ding. Actually, that's too positive. I want to do something. Was chimes more? Yeah, that sounds like a problem. So I'll go ahead and apply. And again, if the whole test runs, so I'll run all of these tests. If they have at least one failing test, you'll hear the failing test sound. Cool. So you might have seen, I have a bunch of console.write lines in my test code. This would normally not be very useful at all, as some of you might be very familiar with. But now we do support standard output and standard error actually appearing in this test detail summary window on the side. So you can get your entire stack trace, that's pretty normal, but you can also now get your standard error and standard output. So that includes console.writeLine and yeah, all kinds of things. So you can kind of collapse it and expand it. And this is something, you see these, this is wrapped. So unwrapped, just right click, wrap text. It gets me when I still get people asking for the test detail summary to do this, and I'm like, it's in there. We put it in there ages ago. Please use. Please tell your friends. Anyway, it's all there for you. And another thing, I thought I had a quick one for that. Oh, yes. So for super long output, we also modified how many characters appear by default in the Test Explorer window. So it used to be capped at like something really low, like 300 characters. So we way upped the character limit of what kind of summary appeared before you had to open the additional log. We have this so that your test can stay performant and kind of responsive. So some people are producing multiple files off of a single test run or tons and tons of characters and everything in logs. So we kind of truncate that data so we don't need to load all of it with every test all the time. So that's kind of why we do that. So this is kind of a huge file of that RSS feed. So you can always expand and open it. And these are actually generally kind of nice features. So before you also couldn't like select a substring to copy out of the Test Explorer. And now you can. So it's more of a standard editor window. And one cool thing. Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. So let's move on a little bit to that sound control panel pane has been in Windows since maybe 95? Probably. It was probably, yeah, well before my time. So speaking of output limits, the debug immediate window limits to 100 lines. Could this be increased, please? The immediate window output, yeah, we could probably get that back on the backlog. Again, my first instinct is, let me go search developer community and see if that's there. developercommunity.visualstudio.com. Cool. So I want to talk a little bit about remote testing. So you might be noticing this weird drop down in the Test Explorer. That's kind of new. So this only appears if I have a test environment.json file. And we can actually generate one for you. It's this option to configure remote testing environments. And what this does is generate a test environment.json at the root of your repository that can list out what other environments your Test Explorer should connect to in order to run tests. So this is listing out don't want to do that. This is listing out a Docker file of this name on my computer that is running. I could also list out a WSL install that I have locally, or even connect over SSH to other VMs with different Windows operating systems installed and that kind of thing. So question in chat, does standard out and standard error capture work for XUnit and other test frameworks? I'm so glad you asked. It does capture console.writeLine for InUnit and MSTest. It doesn't for XUnit because XUnit uses the iTest output helper, and it's used that for years, and that kind of became a standard for XUnit users. I do think we should start going ahead and, so we don't support console.writeLine, and that we support the iTest output helper, and that appears in the test detail summary. I feel like we should also just include console.writeLine, but I think it broke some people who we initially talked to, so we were kind of unsure about that. I keep on wanting to go back and ask Brad what the right thing is to do for XUnit users, but that's where we're at. Okay, so Test Explorer, these environments loaded. Ooh, super cool. These environments are all bring your own compute, so I do need to, for example, make sure that that Docker file is built on my machine, so I'll go ahead and do that. And I can build that from the Visual Studio Developer PowerShell, because Visual Studio has an integrated terminal where you can host all of your favorite terminal things, like even WSL or Developer Command Prompt. And yes, it does kind of, I think it shares a lot of code with the Windows terminal. That's usually things that people ask for. Obviously not all of the cool UI parts, but okay, it's there. Cool. So now that that Docker container is running on my machine, I'll go ahead and connect over Linux. And let's take a look at my tests. So before, my Windows test was passing and my Linux test was skipped. So if I go ahead and navigate there, you can kind of see I do a check and check what OS it's running on and then skip it if it's not supposed to be running on that OS. So Windows test passing. So now I've discovered a test on a new environment that hasn't run yet. So I'll go ahead and run all of these on Linux. It'll get rid of the old Windows test results. And this is entirely connected to my container. And now my Windows tests are skipped and my Linux test is passing. So you can even debug these on a local Linux container, which is super helpful. It will go ahead and attach the VS remote debugger if that's not installed on your container. So we kind of try to glue things together in your environment to get you the kind of debug context that you want. And should hit this breakpoint. Boom. So I can hover over and see kind of variables and what I have in my local context and everything. So that's, remote debugging on a Linux container from Visual Studio on Windows inside of a test. Yay! I'll go ahead and turn off the sounds because they throw me off when I'm presenting. I think, ooh, what am I doing? Okay, cool. One last small thing on testing that I always kind of want to give a shout out to. Playwright is a new test generation or a web UI testing framework, I should say. So let's kind of take a look at one of the tests we have here. So Playwright's really cool. It's all about kind of asynchronous cross-platform testing. So it's very much built with web UI in mind, because a huge challenge with testing web is it's really flaky. Things can move around a bit. There's a little latency in any kind of service or element that's loading. Tests really needed to have asynchronous built into it at the framework level. So things like Selenium could actually mandated you to put in kind of sleep threads and that kind of thing. So Playwright is very much saying, let's not do that. Let's actually call everything async and do that. So it's actually built language agnostically. It doesn't come from the .NET team. It actually works for TypeScript, Python, .NET, and Java. So again, very kind of web focused and trying to get people what they need. So it does come with a recorder. So it's kind of a manual test kind of generation tool. So let me go ahead and show you that. The recorder is cross-platform. So it's entirely kind of CLI based. So you could easily run this from VS Code or a Linux environment, which is kind of cool because you're probably hosting your website on things like that. So I'll go ahead and kind of navigate around. So on the right side here is the recorder, and it launched this window. And basically you can see I'm getting a bunch of sort of highlighting for different elements. And every time I click and interact, it's going to be recording these steps. So I can, interact with expanders, navigate to new pages, and that kind of thing. And every single time it generated a different step for me. And here you can kind of see the drop down. I can generate in different languages. So that's cool. So everything that was generated here was just in like a main file. So I could run this as a console app. And we do have plans in the works to, I think we have a preview of sort of a load testing service that's using this. So kind of mimic hundreds of users using your web app. So Playwright load testing is definitely something I'd keep an eye on, because we've tried to solve this problem in multiple different ways over the years, and I think we keep on, figuring out better ways to call this, to use asynchronous, to target cross-platform, to be more language agnostic and fit with a bunch of different stacks. So I'll go ahead and exit out of these. I copied out some code. I can paste what it was just generated into my test method here. So I can just copy and paste it into any, test framework. You might need to adjust some of the things it does, like what kind of assert statement that it generated. So it was just dot equal instead of equals, to get rid of that kind of error. So little modifications that you might want to do. But right now I have this headless set to false. And you can, ask what browser you want it to launch in. So when I actually go ahead and run this test, oh, I always do this. I always try to run it in Linux. Okay, let's try that again. So when I run this test, it'll actually be replaying it in front of me. So it'll pop up browser and everything. And you can absolutely set headless to true and have it kind of execute without UI. And a really cool thing is you can also take screenshots of it without having it actually execute with UI. So if you want to produce screenshots and kind of step through where your web page was at different steps of the execution, you can browse that without actually having it replay. If you're running this on a server or something like that. So that's pretty delightful. That's Playwright. Okay. Is test environment.json supported by any CLI tools or CI tasks, or just for VS? It is just for VS right now. I would love to get an Azure service, but it's probably a long time coming. I'll have to get more people on board. David knows what I'm talking about. Gotta fund things and have services created. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about some cool productivity things. So let's get into the code fixes and refactorings portion of our evening or lunch. What time is it for you? 6:37 for me. Cool. So code fixes and refactorings, if you don't know what I'm referring to I'm referring to these little screwdrivers and light bulbs that pop up in Visual Studio to kind of help you along. So you'll get these in squiggles and kind of have suggested like light bulbs and refactoring. So this one is, for example, declare as nullable. So I have a constructor that never initiates this, and it's saying, hey, you might be trying to call this member of this type, and you would need a null check if you want to ever do that safely. So I can declare it as nullable, and that'll add in all of the warnings wherever I use this that, hey, could be nullable, add a null check, do it safely. And we're not going to get into all of the different ways you can check for nullable. That's a reference to the bang bang memery happening on our repos. So we have this new code fix and refactoring that's just 2 exclamation points that is going to be checking if null. And ooh, people are not excited about the characters that we chose for it, but we won't get into that war here. This is a happy user group. No, I love the drama. Hashtag .NET Divas. Let's do it. Okay. Okay, so let's see a few more. So one is the ability to change to file scoped namespaces. Yay! Integrating new C# features. So file scoped namespaces you can use to erase your curly braces and extra indentation if you're only using one namespace in a file. So it can literally shift all of your code left and you get back that kind of left space. I like saying shift left because that's a industry thing, but this is literal code, which cracks me up. So you can also let me go ahead and, wait. I wanted to show you that you can get back from it too. So file scope namespace, and then the refactoring to get back is convert to block scope namespace. David, if you implemented any of these, please do a shout out. You deserve credit. I didn't actually do this coding.
I've done a lot of bug fixes with the file scope namespaces stuff.
Nice. Awesome. So another really big one around namespaces, it's the ability to change the namespace to match a folder structure. So right now my namespace is out of sync with where this is in the file. So actually, let me go ahead and press that sync with active document. So this is where the file is, and it's actually in a folder just called Solar System, just the title of my project. So I want to go ahead and sync this, and actually, so I can do this through the light bulb because I got a light bulb suggestion here. but I want this to be kind of a standard for my entire solution. So I want to sync all of my namespaces with my folder structure, which I can now do with a right click in the Solution Explorer. So now my namespace is updated throughout my entire project. Yay! Honestly, I was debugging something with a mentee the other week, and her namespaces did not match anything in their project or folder system, and it really tripped us up because I was trying to add a reference to a test project, and I was like, where is it? Why is it suggesting this random Azure package? And then I realized her team made that Azure package. That was their code. It was the right namespace to use. Oy, we got there eventually. So sync your folders and namespace is just one of the options that would help me. Okay, cool. So another thing in the right click menu is remove unused references. And it's specifically on the project node. I right clicked on the solution node. Okay, so right clicking on projects, you can remove references that you don't need. So it actually searches through your usings to see if you ever like use a type in those projects, and it kind of gives you a warning to say like, hey, you can't undo this, but if you have source control turned on and you saved your file, so the references aren't there anymore, I can always go to my Git Changes window and explore. So I can see exactly what I took out and still kind of revert it from there. Cool, cool, cool. All right, so one small thing that we also added kind of a little bit more recently is extracting base class. We can extract to a totally different file, and you can select which members to extract as well. So another just handy thing. We definitely want to tackle more of the like moving code around kind of refactorings. Extract static method has so many upvotes. We'll get it someday. Someday soon. Right, David? Yeah. Okay. Another cool thing I want to show off is editor config. How many of you use editor config? Some nods. So editor config controls all of the code style and analyzers and kind of naming styles and white space options in your solution in a text document. And now we have kind of UI that overlays it. And UI is really cool, but let's kind of dig into the code behind. So if you just press F7, you can switch from this designer mode to the file that it actually is. And it's tracked in source control, so you can check it in along with your repo so that everyone in your repository is getting the exact same code style that you're getting, which is super, super helpful. So let's actually go ahead and kind of see this in action. What do I usually use for this? Yes. So let's use something like the simplify new expression. So this is also one of the newer things in C#. You don't necessarily need these type names. On the right side of your initialization here. So I could do just new. So that's the simplified new expression. And I'm getting those 3 dots under it because new as a code style is severity is set to a suggestion. So I could bump this up to a warning. So this is just a code style. So it doesn't change any of the meaning of your code. It's just kind of a stylistic choice. And if I bump that up to a warning, it now has a green squiggle underneath it. So it's a little bit more forceful in its recommendation for how you're writing your code. So the cool thing about this is when I go over to my editor config, you'll also see a change in the line. And let's go ahead and save this so that it will be really clear where it was. New naming rules. Ooh, how much did I change? Got that naming specifications. Let's do simplified new. I wanted to show you, oh, here it is. Haha. I should have just typed in new ... Okay, so this is where the severity was changed to a warning. So everyone who opens this repo in Visual Studio are also going to get a warning for this because this warning in your source control is read by Visual Studio, and then it decides what kind of things to show in the editor, what kind of prompts. So you could choose an error, you could choose a suggestion, that kind of thing. So now it's a warning. So you actually saw when I was modifying this as well, code style. Oh, let's do severity. Now I'll do a suggestion, and it's showing you what you're adding and subtracting, the changes, the diff of your editor config file in the preview. Pretty cool. So I totally want to apply this to my whole solution. Why don't I go ahead and do that? So I'll just use the light bulb there and apply it to solution right here. And I'll go ahead and apply. And it's much more simple. Oh, cool. Okay. How much do I need to rush, or should we just kind of pause and look at some questions? I have more cool things to show though, so I could keep going. Well, feel free to chat if there's anything that you're really wondering about. Again, I love adapting and talking about what you all really want to talk about. But if we just want to keep going, one thing I'd love to show is, see if it's working. Some of you might have seen smart whole line completions that appear as ghost text in your editor. And let's see if I need to wake something up. Let's do, oh, there it was. Stop typing, Kendra. Stop typing, Kendra. Space. There it is. Okay. So this is Intellicode whole line completions. So let's do a little bit more, and let's go ahead and actually just open parentheses. What I really want to show is argument completion, but AI is finicky, friends. Doesn't always show up when you want it to show up. Let's, interesting. So you saw a little bit of the ghost text. What I'm actually trying to get it to do is, there we go, is fill in the variables in the local scope. So it can actually detect what parameters would match what you're trying to call and fill it in for you. And then you can accept these completions with tab. So this is AI scanning over your local repository and applying models that it's been trained on when it was training on GitHub on let's see, over 2,000 open source repositories in C# on GitHub, which is pretty cool. So it kind of finds common patterns and tries to apply them in your code. So this is Intellicode whole line completion. So I can press tab and have that accepted. And one thing that I did want to show as well that's related to completion is a couple new things appear in your call list. So we didn't have completion for indexers before. So if you had typed a dot, we still wouldn't show that this type can be called with an indexer. So this with square brackets wouldn't be in the list, but now it is. So you can kind of find realistically everything that you can call on a type, even though it might not actually be called by a dot. So in the same vein, we have overloaded operators also in the completion list. So even though I typed a period in order to get my IntelliSense list, I could still find an overloaded operator, and it erases the period and can fill it in. And we got a couple questions. Does AI help with difficult task of choosing identifying names? I don't think it does yet at all, but it absolutely should. I do think naming is as we know, the most difficult to learn to get right in development. Code completion sometimes freaks me out. Me too, but it's good. So overloaded indexers and operators, Intellicode completion. What else did I want to show? Oh, one super fun thing. You might have noticed these icons throughout some of my code. This is inheritance margin. I believe you can turn this on or off. So this shows you basically the inheritance chain of your code. So everything that a type is implementing and everything that it has a base type of. So you can easily kind of navigate up and down the inheritance chain with things like this. So it shows implementers. I could go navigate to the base type of planet and show everything that derives from that type. Just kind of nice little thing. This was a super, super popular extension that someone on our team actually wrote, and they joined Microsoft, and now it's part of the built-in tools. Pretty fun. One thing that I also really, really love to show, if we have a few more minutes, is what do we call these? Inline hints. So if I hold down, if I have F1 on, if I hold down Alt F1, I can get glyphs to appear in my editor. Ooh, let's zoom way in. Yeah. So Alt F1, these little glyphs appeared where I had simplified my new expression or where I was using var. So see, I have var right here. I'll hold down Alt F1 again. Sometimes quick info fails. Anyway, so I'll hold down Alt F1 and you can see my double, my var changed to a double. And you can also see I'm getting parameter info. So these inline hints are for parameters and arguments and implicit types and new simplified expressions, everything that might be kind of hidden in the code based on your syntax or whatever you're using, you can actually get back. And you can turn this on all the time. So this is available in Tools Options. Let's go to Inline Hints. And so text editor, C# advanced, it's like all the way at the bottom. Oh, there's inheritance margin, better turn that on. Yay. And right above it is inline hints. So right now I have display all hints while pressing and holding down Alt F1 if you just kind of need to peek and see what's going on. But you can also display them all the time and totally customize what's there. So certain settings for different type hints or only for inferred types and that kind of thing. So if you hate var, but the rest of your team loves var, you can actually change what you see without changing your actual source code. Just kind of cool. It says I should use ID. Yeah, AI completion is pretty fun. Cool. Okay, just kind of scanning to see if we have some more questions. Report viewer question, flaky moving from VS version to version. It's not a standard control. You have to rebuild on each upgrade. Yeah. A major thing that broke a lot of our extensions was the move to 64-bit. So that did cause a major rebuild in a lot of our extension ecosystem. So I definitely cut your extension authors a break if you're seeing a lot of kind of, I guess, bugs and stuff in new versions, because a lot of them needed to go back and rewrite some things. We should have been working with, I'm sure we worked with Report Viewer. We tried to reach out to all of the top ones in the ecosystem. I think Leslie Richardson has a blog post about all of our extension changes and how we kind of addressed it, because that was also one of the things holding us back. We didn't want to break our ecosystem. So we couldn't move to 64-bit, but then we had to, so. Cool. Let's see, where are we at? I could keep going. I have Razer Editor things I could show off too. Yeah, why not?
Go for it.
Go for it. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So one thing that I showed off, so before was kind of go-to definition. So we do have that supported in Razer files. So again, Razer files are sort of HTML intermixed with C# code for a fun party. And to help you kind of stay in one language even while you're working with HTML, which can be kind of nice. So a big deal with this is that we actually totally rewrote our Razer editor. It's had some pain in the past, and it probably still has some pain today because it's also new. So we're very aware of some of the performance issues and navigation issues and needing to be a bit more feature complete. But things like rename, we're lighting up some of the basic features that people really love to work with. A really big thing with the rewrite was we moved to LSP, the Language Service Protocol model, which is really cool. It is something that VS Code started as a standardized way for languages to interact with editors. So any editor, so VS Code, VS for Mac, that kind of thing. The C# editor, just the normal CS files, follow that model already. And that's why you can get a ton of what you get of the code fixes and refactorings and all of this stuff across all of our different IDEs in a very kind of similar way. It's because our compiler, Roslyn, is telling the editors in a standardized way what they need to show about all of our code, which is kind of fun. So we're trying to kind of go in that direction with Razer, which will make it a lot more stable to kind of put changes in and work on performance and keep on tackling the huge mountain of issues that we're kind of getting through. Big things though that we did change are things like syntax coloring. So we used to not do secondary highlights super well. So for example, this is highlighted and this has a secondary highlight. Little things like contrasting and code blocks used to be have like really obnoxious background colors, like huge yellow highlights, that kind of thing. We changed a lot of the color scheme around to be a little bit more typical, I guess, of what you expect in files, so that we aren't highlighting everything under the sun for you. Cool. Oh yeah, a really nice thing in this is I can delete using statements, and now I have add missing usings inside of Razer files. So slightly like different syntax and different things to search over, but one of the huge refactorings that's probably our top refactoring is add missing usings, because people know what type they're trying to call and they'll just go ahead and type it, and the editor and your tools need to catch up with you. Cool. So add missing usings, rename, go to definition. I'm trying to think if there's some new things in IntelliSense inside of Razer files as well, but I don't always trigger it correctly. Yeah, basically it's supposed to autocomplete this inside of it. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, won't get some auto completion again. Still a lot of work that we're trying to do there. Okay, cool. Any more questions? We can dive in. Classic ASP, yeah. C# code inside HTML seems to be missing some colors. Yes, we're stretched for colors that we're loading. Actually, this file actually does look a little bit weird. Let's do don't save. And see if more things load. Usually it does have more colors than this. I'm trying to think. Maybe I threw some exceptions and was opted into an older coloring scheme, but yeah, it is missing right now. If I have machine that VS19 installed and VS22 installed, any known issues removing VS 2019, damage to shared tools, etc. Not that I know of. I do have 1,000 versions of Visual Studio installed on my machine. So I kind of keep them around just so I can continue to reproduce older bugs. I do think, I won't say there were no known issues with uninstalling Visual Studio 2019. I do think we were trying to clean up .NET SDKs on your machine. David, I don't know if this is ringing any bells for you, but I'd go ahead and try it, and because .NET SDK versions are fairly easy to acquisition directly if you're missing one. So, and that was the only one that actually does come to mind with that. But you can always keep both installed side by side on your computer forever, like Kendra does. So choose your own adventure there.
Has anyone else got any questions for Kendra? If they don't, I've got one. It's a little more general, which I'm just curious, Kendra, as a program manager, what's your average day? Is it just in meetings all day, or do you actually get to write code yourself, or are you just bossing David around, or what's your average day?
Definitely. Let's see. It's about 2 hours of yelling at David, and then we have breakfast. No, I'm just kidding. We're not on the same time zone. No. I wish I had a typical day. It's really hard to say that I do. I guess for the past few days, I've been reading through 700 comments on the test experience in Visual Studio because we sent out one of those handy dandy surveys. One actually popped up on the hot reload test experience. So that is something that I did put into the product. So kind of rifling through a lot of feedback. A lot of feedback requires me to code to understand what situation they've gotten into, and kind of try to repro it on my own, clone a repro solution that they provided or anything like that. So it does involve using the tools a lot. I wish I was more productive. No, I wish I wrote code that I actually got to check in, but it is a lot of demos and reproing issues and empathizing with things, situations that I hear reported. So yeah, sweet tricks, features, new things. VS is like a candy store. It is super fun to discover all of the things.
Hi Kendra, this is Martin. I do have a comment just in general about how pleased I am with the product in terms of its performance and so forth. So I was previously using 2019, and especially when you had lots of things, client servers running simultaneously, it would glitch now and then. And I haven't experienced any of that with the new variant. So it looks really nice. And also there's no memory leaks, when you've got your little chart watching for memory leaks and so forth, it's just performing really well.
Oh, it's wonderful to hear. Thank you so much. Usually we only hear about the bad things, so that's really, but we can see, 99% of people are doing fine. So all we could do is, imagine.
The bad stuff pays the bills, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But that's okay. Actually, in the survey that I just went through, the 700 comments, probably half of those were very positive because I asked for pain points and then if there were any positive things that affected their rating on our tools and stuff. And it is really nice to remember that it mostly works is the catchphrase. Mostly harmless. It's a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. Do we know when VS 2022 for Mac is coming out? I do not have an update on that. I would definitely ping Jordan Mathewson on Twitter, or yeah, I can get back to you, Tony, if you'd like an update on that. Yeah, well done on porting x64. Hope it makes the next port easier. Hint, hint. Gosh, wouldn't it be nice? Yes, there's always an ongoing debate of kind of when to take the next step and do a .NET Core port or get all those performance improvements and stuff. A ton of the performance improvements you see in VS 2022 was also, it wasn't 64-bit, it was moving internal components to updated versions of frameworks and stuff that they're using. So it's a huge combination of efforts for sure. Same move to VS 22 went better than expected. Oh, that's so great. Yeah. Let's see if I can grab Tony's email address because we can just get on a conversation with Jordan. Is it in the chat? I can't see it. Oh, but I can share. You can always tweet me at GotHeap on Twitter, and I can follow up and find the people that do have the answers to your questions. That's my real strength, not knowing anything, but knowing who knows the things. That's what I really do all day, David.
Yeah, well, that's an important role.
Yeah. Are all the things I demoed available in VS Community 2022? I believe so. I believe I'm just going through the list. Intellicode is available. Remote testing is available in Community. I am using Enterprise right now, but I believe everything I showed is available now. Razer Editor. Yeah, all of our code fixes and refactorings. Yep. I did a demo live unit testing. That's an Enterprise only, but we're good. Yeah.
Another more general question. When you shifted to 64-bit, I guess that was essentially a big breaking change. Did you consider, I guess, Visual Studio is built on, like, there's C++ and C and .NET, and I think it basically is built on .NET Framework, the Windows .NET Framework. Was that a thought to switch to the .NET Core WPF bits, or was that like one step too far?
I think it was already a massive chunk of work, and we needed to do one thing at a time, is how I would say that. So I think, yeah, trying to do everything at once would not have helped us get 64-bit out faster. So we needed to kind of be incremental about it.
Yeah, just thinking about back when Visual Studio adopted WPF, I think that had a big impact on the quality of WPF. So thinking further ahead, it'd be nice to see that in the future. So,
yeah. We have internal engagement is always really interesting when Microsoft users, we do have tens of thousands of users of .NET, of course, internal at Microsoft, and we're also always getting feedback from them. So any kind of in-depth usage of our own tools is always really good for the product.
Cool. Well, I'm conscious of the time, but if anyone, it's sort of last chance for any other questions, if anyone has got something they wanted to ask.
I'll just ask one more, Dave.
Yeah.
Kendra, this might be a little, and also David, this might be a little bit out of your area, but lately I've been fiddling around with some lower level Windows stuff, and I've been using the pinvoke Windows API. It's awful. I was wondering, is there any plans that you're aware of to move this into the 21st century? The Win32 API or equivalent?
David, did you nod? Wenga, do you want to take this?
I started nodding because I thought I knew where the question was going, but then it didn't go there. So it's sort of the wrong we're the wrong side of the company because that's a Windows dev thing. But other than WinUI is presumably that attempt and all those APIs, and so I guess we come into that with Maui targeting that for its Windows supports. But I mean, Win32 API is a very large set of specific APIs, so it's probably not a very good answer without knowing exactly what you're calling. But the only thing, the reason I started nodding, there is a newish, I think it's called CS Win32, which is a source generated pinvoke generator wrapper for you, which makes calling them easier.
Okay.
So it doesn't remove the fact that you have to call these horrible APIs, but at least takes away some of the pain of like marshalling and pointers and all that, some of that sort of stuff, by just generating the right things. So that might be worth looking at. Depends on exactly what you're calling, I guess.
Okay, thanks for that. Appreciate it.
And I can put my email in the chat if you want to email me us and follow up at all. We might be able to locate the people who are a little bit closer to that work.
Cool. Well, we might wrap it up there and let Kendra have the rest of her evening, and everyone else can get back to work or go out for a lunch or whatever you're planning to do. Would everyone join me in thanking Kendra very much for joining us today for a fantastic talk? And I've learned a lot myself. I thought I knew Visual Studio, but picked up some really nice tips today, so that was really good. Do follow Kendra on Twitter if you're on Twitter, or reach out to her if you do have some questions. I know she's very helpful. I had the privilege once of being able to ask her a question about testing stuff, and she was able to point me in the right direction. So great person. Really appreciate her joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everyone who asked questions and turned on your cameras. It's like I was interacting with real people again.
Yeah,
I love that. I'm a PM.
We would love to have you come and visit Adelaide one day if you're.
Oh my gosh, that'd be amazing.
Have a tour of Australia. I'm sure that could be organised. Fantastic. All right. Well, have a great day, everybody, and look forward to catching you all again next month. And, goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your day.